So, Ruth 1. Ruth 1 is the verses for today. Just come into my head this morning when I decided to get up. I was like, Lord, I've been busy yesterday. I actually didn't read my Bible yesterday. Up early, away to work, working all day. Didn't get home until well after 7. Kids were here for dinner and my oldest son didn't leave till late into the evening, so I didn't read my Bible. I got up this morning and I was like, I need to read my Bible first thing this morning because I didn't do it yesterday, and it's not guilt. It's not even really conviction. I just know I wanted to do it and spend time with God first this morning because everything else was going mad yesterday. And I heard Ruth 1 and I'm like, Lord, why we've done Ruth. We've done Ruth. What could you possibly say in Ruth 1? Let's just turn to Ruth 1. So I started to read through the chapter and I'll read it quickly here now, because I don't know if anybody that's listening to me maybe does not have a Bible and has never read the book of Ruth. So I think it's just better to read quickly. So there's context to what I'm about to say. So it's titled, this part, Naomi's family in Moab. So during the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. A man had left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons to live in the land of Moab for a while. So we know that Israel and Judah were God's people. That's where they had lived. And then Moab were, the Moabites came down through Lot's daughter. And they weren't a good people. When the Israelites came out of Egypt, he moved them into the wilderness. And as they passed Moab, and this is where Balak and Balaam comes in Numbers 22. So you can go and read that. I'll do a whole thing on that, maybe at a later date. So this is where they've gone. So it doesn't make sense that they have come out of God's promised land, where the Israelites resided, and then went into Moab. I don't know why. They went to the wrong place anyway, but that's where they moved. And during this time, they were Ephrathites from Bethlehem and Judah. So I think Ephraim was a clan of Judah. Then they entered the land of Moab and settled there, so they stayed there. Naomi's husband Elimelech died, and she was left with her 2 sons. So I'm sure there's people that are listening and they've had a loved one die, and I mean someone very close, like your mum, your dad, your husband, your wife, even a child, and that hurts. So you could imagine how Naomi was feeling when the husband had died. But the 2 sons were there, so she was okay. So she was obviously supported by them, because back in the day, women couldn't support themselves. Their husband looked after them. And then it said the 2 sons took Moabite women as their wives, so they married into the opposing side, let's put it that way. One was named Orpah, and the second was named Ruth. After they lived in Moab about 10 years, both the sons, Mahlon and Chilion, also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 children and without her husband. So they moved from Bethlehem in Judah, go out to live in Moab. The husband dies, then the 2 sons married 2 Moabite women. The 2 sons die. And now she's left with 2 daughter-in-laws. It doesn't say that they had children or anything like that. So I'm sure Naomi is very sad, very upset, very hurt, probably feels completely distraught. What are we doing? How are we eating? And why has this happened? So then it goes on to say about Ruth's loyalty to Naomi. So she had her daughter-in-laws prepare to leave the land of Moab because she had heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to his people's need by providing them food. This is back in Bethlehem. So they packed up and she left the place where she had been living, accompanied by her 2 daughter-in-laws, and they travelled. along the road leading back to the land of Judah. This is quite a big journey. I've looked at this before. It's a big enough journey for a couple of women. Like it's not like going 10 minutes down the road to another town. And then she says to them, each of you go back to your mother's home. So she's saying to them, basically, I can't look after you. I need to go back to my own place where I originated from, to my people. And you need to go back to your people. You don't have to stay with me. You can go home. And may the Lord show faithful love to you as you have shown to the dead, meaning the sons and her husband, and to me. So these are obviously good daughter-in-laws, because Naomi doesn't say anything horrible. She actually puts a blessing on them. And may the Lord enable each of you to find security in the house of your new husband. And she kissed them, and they wept. So there was obviously a strong tie with Naomi's daughter-in-laws. With Naomi, you know, they obviously got on very well. They obviously were very close, and respected each other like proper family. And both of them said to her, no, we will go with you to your people. But Naomi is now still saying to them, return home, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters, go on, for I'm too old to even have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me to have a husband tonight and to bear sons, would you be willing to wait for them to grow up? So she's obviously thought about all the scenarios and everything that could happen, and she has reasoned in her mind, this is not what's going to happen. Would you even restrain yourselves from remarrying? Like, you know, if you're going to wait this length of time, you probably want to remarry someone by then, and then she'll have had these boys and they won't have got married to the daughter-in-laws again. No, my daughters, my life is much too bitter for you to share, because the Lord's hand is turned against me. So this is Naomi's thinking. Like, God hates her, God doesn't love her, God took her sons away, God took her husband away, and has left her desolate and unable to look after herself, and especially not these two daughter-in-laws. It's basically extra weight that she can't cope with. So she's chasing them away. And Naomi said, and then it says, again, they all wept loudly. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. So Orpah kissed her because Orpah left. She went back to her town, her family. And Naomi said, look, your sister-in-law's gone back to her people and to her God, small g. Follow your sister-in-law, go. But Ruth replied, and it's probably some of the most beautifulest words in the Bible, do not persuade me to leave you or go back and not follow you, for wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. And where you die, I'm going to die, and there I will be buried. And may the Lord do this to me, and even more, if anything but death separates you from me. And when Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped trying to persuade her. She gave up. And when Naomi saw that Ruth was determined, and then the two of them travelled until they came to Bethlehem. So off they went. And when they entered Bethlehem, the whole town was excited about their arrival, and the local women were saying, can this be Naomi? She's been gone for over 10 years. I think, did it say there, the sons died 10 years after the father, so it doesn't say how long they were actually living there in total, so a good long time. And then, of course, in Naomi's mind, this is where she's at. Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, she said, for the Almighty has made me very bitter. I left full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. And why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has pronounced judgment on me, and the Almighty has afflicted me? So Naomi came back from the land of Moab with her daughter-in-law Ruth, the Moabitess. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. I looked that up. The beginning of the barley harvest would have been March and April. So it's the spring harvest, springtime. So I was reading this and I was like, what are you trying to say to me? And I really started to think about it. Elimelech and Naomi left the land of their people and their God, and they went to another place. The Moabites didn't worship God, Yahweh, the I Am. They didn't worship him. Was it wrong for them to leave and go there? Probably. You know, when you move out of alignment to the wrong place where God doesn't mean for you to be, things start happening, and then we wonder why. And her husband died, and her sons died, and she's left desolate. And I started to think about my life and moving out of alignment with God and being in a situation that I shouldn't have been in, and living a life that I shouldn't have been living. And then disaster happens, and then we get bitter, and then we say, God, why has this happened? And this was me yesterday. I was like, why has this happened to me? Why has this happened to me? Why have you let this happen? And I'm very careful to do it with a humble heart, and I think God's big enough to take it. And I'm always asking him questions like, I can't believe this has happened. Sometimes I just want to pretend it doesn't exist. It hasn't happened, and I want to live in fairy la la land. But, you know, that's life. Things happen and they're devastating. This was devastating for Naomi. So much so that she starts to take on the wrong identity. When she starts to call herself Mara, God showed me that's not a name that God gave her. This is an identity that Naomi starts to take on because she becomes bitter. She let her heart become bitter. She's stating that she's bitter. And we know God does not give us a spirit of bitterness or of anger or of hate. Like, that's just not God's character. So where did this come from? So lies start to be getting told in Naomi's head, and she starts to take on the wrong identity of bitterness, and she actually changes her name. And there's lots of examples in this in the Bible about people's names being changed, like Jacob to Israel, because of God's blessing. And they start to get mixed up in their identities, and Naomi's having an identity crisis. And she starts to profess that she's Mara because God has judged her and brought bitterness and brought her back empty. And we need to be careful of that. We need to be careful not to sit in bitterness because it's not of God. It says in Timothy, 2 Timothy, I think it is, God's give us a spirit of power and of love and a sound mind. We are not to take on the identity of what the liar is telling us, the lies of we're desolate, we have nothing, God's been bad to me, he's took us all away, he's judged me. Those are the wrong things. That's not the truth. That's not what God has for us. And we're not to sit in that bitterness and not to profess the wrong identity and the wrong name over us. Because it says in the Bible that we are a royal priesthood. We have authority and dominion. And we have that through Jesus Christ. And we need to understand who we are. And I've done videos on that before. Now, I understand where Naomi is. Naomi is broken. And in the wrong thinking of her mind, and this, like, I've been there and I've been very broken, and this is when we ask the Holy Spirit to come in and just to convict us of wrong thinking, wrong things that we're saying. And whenever she says that the Lord's pronounced judgment on me and the Almighty has afflicted me, it rings clear of Job and what Job says as well. And then Job gets a telling off, and God speaks to him and tells him exactly who he is and puts him right. And it's the same thing here with Naomi. But Naomi's a woman, and I think God has a wee soft spot for women. I hear people saying this all the time, but when you look at Naomi, God doesn't come in and speak to her and shout at her the way he sort of does with Job, actually, and the way he did with Jonah. there's nowhere really in the Bible, I'm trying to rack my head, that I see where he corrects a woman. Let me deal with my cat here.